Hey everyone, I'm here with Kelly Skinner from the Soul Care Urban Retreat Center. Hey Kelly,
Hi there.
I'm so excited that you're with us today for the Fireside Chat. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, even though it's a little bit cold here. It's a sunny blue skies, and it's a portent that winter is almost over.
Oh my gosh, here in Connecticut, we never got winter, so I'm being a little careful about saying it's almost over. I swear we're going to get hit with like
Mhm.
3 feet of snow
I know.
tomorrow.
I feel like we are too in Illinois.
Okay, you're in Illinois. So talk to us about where you are, what you're doing with the Soul Care Urban Retreat Center, et cetera, because I'm really excited about talking with you today about this.
Yeah, so I live in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, which is considered East Central Illinois. So we're about 2 hours south of Chicago and about 90 miles west of Indianapolis. So it's where the University of Illinois is located, and we're kind of a mix between a small city and a rural area. And so I opened up Soul Care in October, and it's urban retreat center is what I call it. And really, it's a place for people to experience spiritual wellness and self-care, and also to have a place where they can find stillness and quiet and reflection. And then finally, a place where they can connect with a community of like-minded people who are interested in their own spiritual journeys and living into their most authentic selves.
I love that. And something I remember in our previous discussions, you were sharing with me that it's when you say like minded, it doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, you're a Christian, I'm Christian, or you're Buddhist, I'm Buddhist. It's people that are interested in spiritual wellness, spiritual advancement,
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah, for sure. In fact, one of the things that I'm really adamant in sharing with people is that, and unique about soul care, I think, across the country, is that this space is open to people of all beliefs and backgrounds. And so you don't have to have a certain label. And I often say that we're kind of serving people on a continuum. So if you associate and identify with an institutional religion on one side, or you identify as being spiritual but not religious, or even kind of say an atheist or an agnostic, you're still welcome at Soul Care. And it's really for you to explore what spiritual wellness means for you at this point in time on your spiritual journey.
I really love that because you typically don't think of like atheists as spiritual. And
Hmm.
yet there is a spiritual element because they've had to research to decide they don't believe in anything.
Exactly. And
Oh my
people
gosh,
still,
yeah.
I mean, a lot of people who identify as atheists still might be humanistic or still may have a code of morality that they follow. And they still have an authentic self, their true self that they're trying to find, even if they don't identify with there being a God.
Mm. So let's talk about just so for the setting the tone of this, spirituality. When you say like urban retreat center, spiritual care, how do you define that?
Sure. So for me, spirituality and soul care is to look and identify with whatever your bigger purpose is in the world. And so, even no matter what you believe is going to happen to you after you die, it's more about being present in the world and showing up again as your most authentic self. And for some people, that might be connecting and building a relationship with whatever they define as the divine, and some of that might be just plumbing the depths of their own inner self, listening to the quiet inner voice of themselves, their authentic self, and living into that purpose of who they're meant to be.
Okay, I like
Yeah,
this. I like the
yeah.
so we know buzzword right now is authenticity, right? And
Oh, for
authentic.
sure.
And
Yeah.
I was sharing with someone a few chats ago, we were talking about how like before Brene Brown, authenticity was still there.
Mhm.
Vulnerability was there. We love
Oh,
Brene.
for
I'm a
sure.
huge fan.
Me too.
But I also know that because of the popularity and the rising increase in the increase in people reading her, people started to, dismiss the word authentic. And so I use that also in my branding. It's so important
Mhm.
with your voice that you understand who you truly are. Because if
Mhm.
I don't understand who I truly am, I can't speak to you as I am in this moment that I'm in it. And
Mhm.
that's when we start to show up differently. It's when we start to present as the person we want to be
Mhm.
versus who we are. And there is some validity in that, right? My coach is always saying, like, show up in the world as your next level self. And I agree with that. But then
Uh-huh.
there's also, I have to be authentic to who I am now to show up as my next level self. So when you talk about authenticity, share what you mean by that, just so we're on the same page. And so for anyone who's like, oh God, here we go again with the authentic thing, let's really like squash that for anyone, because this is good stuff that people need.
I haven't really thought about that very much, but those are really good points. And I think the things that Brene Brown has been sharing that is very popular and buzzwordy, but that quest to find your authentic self has been around for years. I mean, if you look at the archetype models, it's kind of labeling who that core, what your core inner drive is. If you look at the Enneagram, it's what your core motivations are, and living in and becoming balanced and whole in the world with your true self and your shadow self. If you look at the work of mystics, I was actually just talking um, at a church on Sunday and talking about the work of Meister Eckhart. And he talks about finding your whole self. And he identifies, of course, as being a Christian and coming from the Catholic Christian tradition. But he said, you know, that oneness of yourself with the divine and who you were created to be. So I think it is all about kind of excavating is a word that I use quite a bit when I talk about my own personal journey. I think we're socialized to show up in a lot of different ways and to be different things that are our relationships, our significant people in our lives, our career, our place in society says who we think that we should be, but we're constantly hearing a voice from our insides, whether that be the voice of our truest selves or the voice of the divine, or what I believe is a kind of a co-creating methodology where we're discovering and fulfilling who we're meant to be as the individuals on this world, in this place, in this time.
That's awesome. It's funny because I don't want to be that girl who's like, oh my God, I wrote this book, but I'm about to be that girl. So you just
Right.
mentioned co-creating. So I'm going to be that girl.
Yeah.
Co-creating is something that I share in the book I just published.
Mm.
That is, so I'd spent my journey as a Christian, and well, I became a Christian while 16 and pregnant. I got
Mm.
introduced to the
It's a good
church,
time to
and
become a
yeah,
Christian.
it's a very good time. And so I immediately understood the whole savior aspect. I didn't get the whole lordship aspect. Like, I understood I was being saved from this version of myself, but I didn't understand the lordship piece. And so as I evolved in my life, as I went through my young adult years, I had this idea of God that I had to show up in this certain way. I had to be this certain thing. And so I share about that. Like, it's all, I was doing the right things. Why isn't my life this certain way? And we teach this crap in church. There's no other word for it. And I'm not against the church. I just am against some of the ways that we're presenting things to people.
Mhm.
But we teach it almost like, you're supposed to come in, and depending on what your sin is, tomorrow you show up very clean, very, the Saul kind of experience. And
Right.
so to summarize this to the point that I really love that you just said is with the co-creating, I shared that it wasn't until I realized I get to co-create this life with God.
Mhm.
It's not about him saying, Shell, this is what I created you for, and you will do this and you will do that. And if you turn left, I'm gonna be disappointed. It's about me and him, and me showing up, and I get free will.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
whole basis of my religion, right? Of what I
Right.
chose to believe. And for years, I didn't know that. And I see so many people that get stuck. And so when you talk about co-creating, I love that. I
Mhm.
really, there's just no other way to express it. I love that, because I think if more of us understood, it's not this paved out path.
Right.
There's validity. I think it's Robert Frost who said, don't go where the path leads, but like pave your own kind of thing.
Take
I'm
the
totally
path on,
messing.
take the road untraveled. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. So Robert Frost has the one about the road untraveled, and then there's like this magnet I have my friend Teresa gave me, and it talks about like don't go where the path already is, but like carve your own.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to find it and then post it like in the comments when I share this on the blog. But so talk about how you help people do that. Like, am I coming? So I hear Urban Retreat Center and come sit in the silence, and I don't know whether to picture, since I'm not in Illinois because I'm here in Connecticut, to
Uh-huh.
picture like this big open space with people just doing their own thing, or are there different rooms I can go? What does your space look like? Yeah, talk to us
Yeah.
about that.
So right now, number one, it was really important to me to not have this retreat center. When you typically think of retreat centers, I think a lot of people think about going out into a farm or going to a monastery or going out in the country or going out from society and like secluding yourself or cloistering yourself away from things. And I'm a big believer in spirituality of the ordinary. And so I wanted a place right in the middle of our downtown area that was really easily accessible to people, right smack in the middle of their daily lives. And I wanted to have a place where somebody could come before, or after work, or come on their lunch hour, or come in an evening, and they wouldn't have to sit. There's no overnight retreat space here. You come for a couple hours, or you come for a program, or you come for an hour, and do what you need to do. Um, I'm really trying to bring kind of a menu or a smorgasbord or a buffet of different spiritual practices from a lot of different faith traditions. So whether they're, again, from an institutional religious tradition, like for example, on Friday mornings, we do I teach different contemplative prayer practices from the early Christian tradition, like Lectio Divina or the Examen prayer or breath prayers. And then I teach them, and then people can go into, I have these quiet pods that are like little mini retreat spaces. So they're about as big as like a walk-in closet with a couch and a small writing table and a light and a privacy curtain. So people can go into those pods and practice what they've learned. I do like 2-hour, 4-hour, and 8-hour retreats that you can do by yourself or with a friend or with a small group of people, like up to 8 people. And then I partner with people from our community or broader to bring in different practices. So on Saturday, we did a 2-hour workshop Saturday night on astrology. And astrology, it was called Venus, Mars, and Love in the Stars. And she talked about kind of the mechanics of astrology and different things around it. But then the next day, I did a Bible journaling class. And then I also partner with people who do different mind body spirit services. So I have a spiritual director who comes in and offers appointments. I have somebody who's doing massage and zero balancing and cranial sacral therapy. I have a life coach. So again, all these different practices and spiritual traditions that you can learn from lots of different modalities, I would say, and different ways to be interfacing with the divine and your authentic self. So I'm going to try to do a seminar on, I'm planning a seminar with somebody on the difference between intuitives and mystics. I have another thing that I'm going to do on the many, many different names and metaphors of God, because that's actually something that I'm really passionate about. That you can kind of interface with the divine in a variety of different ways, depending on the images that you use and the names that you use to choose to address the divine energy. So yeah, so that's what I talk about when I say like different practices. We're bringing the gamut, and one of our core kind of belief statements is that it is like a buffet or more like a potluck. And so you can kind of look at what's being offered, and you can kind of take what's appealing, take what resonates with you, and throw away the rest.
Mm. So how have people been respond? Like, so I think of my own journey is my parents really encouraged us, and the people. I'm a state kid. I grew up in foster care for a little bit in the state system, and so my parents and the people around me really encouraged me, like, learn the different things, go to a Buddhist, a Hindu, I think Buddhist temple, and like talk to your Hindu friends, understand the different gods. Why are there so many of them? talk with my Muslim friends, understand what is the call to prayer. Why are you doing it 3 times a day?
Mhm.
What is Ramadan? What is the point of it? Talk with my Catholic friends. Why do you pray to Mary instead of
Mhm.
just going right to Jesus?
Right.
Talk with the Christians and understand, like, what is the difference between Protestant and not Protestant and non-denominational? And you're
Uh-huh.
doing backflips and you're believing in gold teeth and you're just
Uh-huh.
standing there and you're in and out in an hour, but there's 6 hours. And that really, I mean, even I spent a year in a Kingdom Hall studying with the Jehovah's Witnesses when I was 14. I was excommunicated because I wouldn't go door to door, so I'm not
Oh,
allowed back. But
right.
I had too
Celebrate your
many
birthday.
questions. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I had too many questions about why scriptures were missing.
Mhm.
But it's something like I think it led to me becoming who I am in terms of I'm never threatened by anybody else. And
Mhm.
I don't believe that because we believe different things, we're a threat to one another. I have some of the best conversation in my life with one of my friends who's Buddhist and another friend of mine who's Muslim. Like, she is amazing in how we get to talk and understand different practices. So how is the community received you? Have you seen a
Mhm.
lot of support and people saying, like, hey, maybe I don't personally subscribe to being able to think different things or pick your own, potluck
Mhm.
kind of thing. But at the same time, I can see the benefit of understanding, like, oh, wow, you do this 3 times a day and it's to this specific prayer and you get in this specific posture. And I could see how that might help me become more disciplined in my own spiritual practice, my own religion. Like, talk
Mhm.
about that a little bit.
I feel like there's certainly a specific audience who is more open to having a place that provides a diversity of thought around spirituality. I would say this is kind of the perfect time in our evolution of people, because I think there's a lot more people who are they call it deconstruction in the evangelical world, are kind of questioning the faith that they grew up with and maybe finding it a little bit limiting, and want to have safe spaces where they can explore what their own personal belief systems are. I find it funny because I think part of me assumed that if you were somebody who identified as being outside of the Christian tradition, that you might be a little bit more open-minded to all traditions. And I find that there's kind of fundamentalists in every camp. And so people who are not open-minded, who may be coming from a pagan background or coming from a non-Christian background or coming from an atheist background, who are just as kind of stereotypically closed-minded as some people who I've encountered who have come from a very evangelical fundamentalist Christian background. And so I've kind of said, if you are not in line with the very core beliefs that I've set forward here, that's fine. There's lots of other people who are. And I don't want to waste time being in an argument or trying to justify where I'm coming from. And I come from a lot of things from a place of curiosity, and kind of say, okay, so what is it about the things that you believe in that might resonate with me? And how can I use that to enrich my own belief system and my own experiences? And again, what can I take from what you're doing and use it to enhance what I'm doing? And I'm not necessarily threatened by that either, but a lot of people are, and it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to judge, or I try not to judge people from where they're at, and just try to be curious about what their beliefs are.
And the space that you have encourages those kind of conversations
Mhm.
too. Um,
Yes, and to
so
try to also kind of say, here's the ground rules for the conversations that we're going to be having, and even
okay.
if your personal belief, like, please try to come at it not from a place of judgment either, but from a place of curiosity.
And I think that's so wise for everything in life, right? When we're curious, um, they talk about curiosity killed the cat, but it only kills the cat if he moves on it. Listening to information never hurts anybody, right? It's only when he jumps to see if
Mhm.
he's going to land on his feet. I think
Mhm.
something that I really loved in all of the stuff I was taught was being able to sit with somebody from a different background and just kind of ask questions, hear why is
Mhm.
it you believe this, and not for, I remember one time, and I know a lot of Christians disagree with this, and I'm okay with that. I'm secure in who I am. I'm not an evangelical, like I don't evangelize. My I'm happy to talk about God. I'm happy to share my faith with you. I don't I think the word's proselytize or something like that.
Traumatized, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I can't do that. It's not who I am. If you have questions, let's talk. I've been a youth pastor. I've been a young adult leader. I'm happy to have the conversation. But at the end of the day, I believe my God's strong enough to vindicate or to validate himself. So he doesn't, like we talked about that actually, you and I before. And so I love that there's spaces popping up where people, because not everybody's brought up in a home where you go have those conversations. Like I remember when I was leading in one church, I used to tell the girls, if you're here just because your mom forced you to, go do your
Yeah.
homework. Because this is
Uh-huh.
2 hours. You don't need to sit in my class and listen to me tell you
Right.
what I believe just so you can pretend you have your parents' faith. But if you want to learn and you
Mhm.
want to ask questions, I'm not afraid of any question. Bring them. Because if I don't know them, you're going to encourage me
Right.
to
And
learn.
the other thing, that I'm trying to do, right?
Yeah,
Mhm. So the other thing that I'm trying to do is also, provide people that sense of community, because as people are, maybe asking questions or, um, trying to expand their view of their own faith, their doctrine, their dogma, their whatever their belief systems are, and trying to define that for themselves. A lot of people are finding that they're losing the community. And so I wanted to provide people a safe space to land, um, and build a community here. And I'm not trying to replace a church. I'm not trying to replace um, those communities, because I think those are important to our society. I think they're important
absolutely.
to people, but I'm trying to kind of provide an alternative community for people who are maybe feeling isolated or alone. The other kind of, um, I don't often actually talk a lot real heavy about spirituality. One of the things that I try to offer this space up as too is just a refuge. And so if
Mm,
you're, we are busy, 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 busy. We're burning candles at both ends. We're isolated. We're burnt out. We're anxious. We're depressed. Even people who are suburban middle-aged women are feeling that way, let alone people who have experienced trauma or who have had difficult life experiences. And so I'm trying to also provide a refuge for people where they can find some of that rest and stillness and quiet that I mean, for me, it always has a component of the divine kind of woven into that. But sometimes I don't even talk about that and just kind of say, come in for a place where you can fill yourself back up because you've been pouring out into other people and you need to recharge yourself.
mm. Something, oh man, that's such, okay. So one of the things, I went to a retreat back in May with my
Mhm.
coach and some amazing women. Um, and one of the biggest points that I took away from it is, so growing up, as an adult growing up, and it's not just in the church, like in life we're taught the pitcher, pour out, get recharged, give. And I love that one of the things she taught us, and it's such a beautiful visual to me, is she taught us about being more like a fountain,
Oh
where
yeah.
that top level is just always being filled, whether it's through spirituality, whether it's through self, whatever your, you
Uh-huh.
know, source is, being always filled up, and then you're overflowing and overflowing. And because as you pour into somebody
I
else who's
love
being poured into, yeah, that visual. And I've always been a water girl, and fountains, I just love them
me
too.
too.
But I always,
Mhm.
even like one of my favorite books was this one called Refuel. I forget who wrote it, but it was all about like recharge yourself, pour it out, recharge yourself, pour it out.
Mhm.
And I lived that way for so long. And then one day I was like, I'm so tired of being empty. And I realized I had this transactional faith because of being taught that way. So I would take in the Bible, I would then spit it out to the kids, teach them what I did. Well, I never really digested it. And so then I'd be reading it again to give it to another. And so literally within just the last 3 years, I finally got to the space where I stepped back. I'm not teaching anymore. I'm not doing for anybody. I am going to get fat for myself. Like, I'm tired of being a bird. I'm going to take it all in like a cow and digest this.
Love.
And all of a sudden, I started understanding things differently. I started all of a sudden questioning things that I had never questioned because I didn't have time to question them because it was in and out, in and out. And what I love about the fountain is it's not always that the water from the bottom is what's going over. If you fill up a fountain, sometimes the water on the top just goes down. And
Right.
that's something that's so beautiful about if we're constantly being filled and then giving to others from a place of abundance instead of deficit. I'm giving you the best of me, and I'm giving you some stuff that maybe I don't agree with. Maybe in this conversation, there's pieces we don't agree with, but somebody else will. But because we're
Right.
both coming today recharged and full and giving from that overflow, it doesn't matter if it's from the depths of who we are or from that surface. It just gets to flow out. And it's changed my worldview. It's
Oh, I
made my
love that.
faith stronger. Yeah, that retreat, it was similar to your space where she did the retreat in a local, it was like a fancy home, not the kind of place I
Right.
typically go. Like the food was so fancy. It was like that place where you're like, this is $100, but but it was so good and I was
You
so
have to
full.
send me info about
Oh,
that.
I will. Oh my gosh. Spicer Mansion. That's what it was called. Spicer Mansion. And it was just this, it was so beautiful. It's here in Mystic, Connecticut. And
Hmm.
I remember when I walked into this place feeling so out of place. I remember meeting the first lady and just thinking, oh, I don't belong here. She was so put
Oh,
together. She had her jumpsuit on. She was just vibrant. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But through that space of creating this area where we could come as we are and talk about how to get to the next level and what it is we want and have a safe space to voice things, I walked away with more than 10 years of learning in that one day, in the 2 days that I was with her. Like, it was such a cool thing. Do you find, did you get frozen? Oh, there we go. Okay. Are you
yeah.
back? Okay. It froze for a second.
Yeah.
I'm like, she's had that same look for a minute. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Did you hear all of that at least?
No.
Oh no. Okay. I was saying because she created this safe space where we could all come together as we are, while looking at what is our next level self and not have any judgment. If you said you want to do world domination,
Right.
okay, it doesn't matter if I think that's not okay.
Uh-huh.
We're going to talk about it because this is the space. And so it was really cool to be in this place where people were throwing around numbers that for me it was like, like, did she just say that much? I remember like sharing, there was like this number exercise where you had to say what your next level self earns. And
Uh-huh.
like my number was here compared to where they were. And as they were saying theirs, it made me start rethinking, like, am I thinking too small?
Right.
They see something in me that they don't think I don't belong here. So taking that was a retreat space also done in the heart of our downtown Mystic area. Not
Mhm.
urban by any means. Mystic is our little touristy area here in
Right.
southeastern
Mhm.
Connecticut. But it was in this location right downtown. It's where all the tourists can walk. We were in the center of it all and yet had this sacred space to ourselves. It sounds like that's what you offer. And sometimes in a forum where can I come in? So if like my coach wanted to, can she rent
Do a
space
retreat.
out? Or you talk to us about that, because
Yeah,
there's
so
lots of
this is
different people
actually
out
a
there.
great yeah, this is a great space, and we're a Big Ten college town. So it's not downtown Chicago. It's our Midwest small city. And I'm right across the street from a mall that's actually it's a mall, but it's being repurposed. So we have like a food co-op in it, and we have some ethnic food restaurants in it, and there's this really great place where that area teachers. It's called the Idea Store, and they have all these like random random things that people donate that you can create things out of. Um, and so that, and the huge farmers market that's in the area is in the parking lot there. So it's just this really cool alternative community. And it is, I mean, we're right downtown, or right across the street from a new hotel that will be opening in 2 years, they're taking this historic hotel and turning it into, I think it's Hyatt or Hilton, these boutique historical spaces. And my place holds about 30 people for seminars, 30 to 40, depending on what the setup is. And it's a great place to have like a full day or a weekend seminar for a retreat for people, because you don't have to stay there overnight. You can have other experiences outside of here. So it's a great place. And I've actually been trying to partner with some other coaches and things on the national level to have them think about bringing their retreats here.
Great. I'll have to make sure I get all of your social media at the end. Let's make sure that
Yeah,
we
for
share
sure.
that. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then I'll make sure it's in the YouTube description and that we post that on the blog as well when we share this video. Um, so one of the things when we were going back and forth, so for a little background, Kelly and I met through Diana's group, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so another Simply Business partner. So Ashley was one of my fireside chats a few weeks ago.
Oh,
That was fun
cool.
getting to chat with her about email
And
marketing.
Ashley has helped me with my website.
Okay,
Mhm.
yes, we learned in the fireside chat that she's not doing websites anymore,
Exactly.
which
She
is
moved on
very
and up
exciting.
leveled, but she's still
Yes.
doing mine.
Okay. So you're one of the ones that's like ghostwriting. I don't ghostwrite anymore, but I still have 3 or 4 authors. I also don't edit, but yet I have 3 or 4 authors that it's like they just know
Mhm.
you send it to me, we're gonna be good. Like we're gonna get it done for you.
Sure.
Whereas I morphed it into coaching, and that's what I do now, which you've seen some of that as in that group is where I've really shared some of the struggles that have come when you're trying to go from being really successful in this one area into a new area, and you're like, what happened?
Right?
I went from eating steak to ramen noodles, and I don't like isodia. And so
Right. And
no,
it's
go
been
ahead.
so interesting with my business because in that world of coaches or creative professionals, so many people are having online businesses, and so I'm finding so many good things of people who are doing online businesses, and then I have to kind of translate to having a brick and mortar location. So that's been just a really neat experience to be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that group is so good at connecting all of us because regardless, I may not have the rent to work with, but we have getting the word out there, and how does our website look, and does it tell the story we want? And then you've got Diana who's great with the color. I still
Yeah.
laugh when I was walking through Walmart with my little one, I saw this like yellow sweater. I'm like, Diana, in my mind for the next 20 minutes. Yeah. Because she's so good with the
Uh-huh.
color psychology. And I think networking, and you mentioned community earlier, it's such a big thing. And so I'm going to use that to segue. So we have Simply Business. It's this great place where whether you're a new entrepreneur or an advanced entrepreneur, we're coming together and we're sharing passion and new ideas. And one of my foundations is being a creative entrepreneur. And I love creativity and everything about it. And something that really struck out to me is when I sent you the questionnaire, you said you did not think you're a creative entrepreneur. Like you didn't see yourself in that way. And so let's talk about that. So you mentioned that you see yourself that you create,
Mm-hmm.
but not that you're a creative. And so what do you see as the difference between the two? Like when you hear creative, what do you
Mm-hmm.
think of?
So I think when I hear the word creative used as an adjective, like a creative entrepreneur, I definitely see that as being, like we call it here in our area, makers. So people who are actually making art to sell, or making a creative product, doing lettering or making t-shirts, or making something that's a little bit more, I would say, artistic. So I think when I hear that term, being a creative, I think I wouldn't lump myself in that category, even though there's things that I certainly have created and manifested. And I feel very generative. I wouldn't call myself a creative because
It's
I'm not a
so
photographer. I'm not a letterer. I'm not an artist. I'm not a musician. I'm not creating a piece. I guess I'm creating an experience, an
yeah.
environment, but I don't know that I would label myself as a creative.
So one of my missions in life is to help us all see. I think of a creative as anybody who creates.
Hmm.
So when I started the Essential Creative, there was a two-pronged approach. One is I needed a space to share about essential oils because I use them all the time and I love them, and I wanted to be able to share them. And my Shell Vera, where I do the coaching and the ghostwriting, that wasn't really the right place, because even though it comes into that, like even talking to you, I've got gratitude and creativity in the background. I said creativity, clarity and gratitude oils burning. And
Hmm.
but it's like I do it as part of that, but it wasn't like, how do you merge that in and then the next post is about your voice? And so I wanted to create this blog that was just for anybody who was creating something, and then
Hmm.
being able to share how like essential oils came into this. Well, it morphed into, over the years, it's been 2 years now that I started it. I've been using essential oil since 2014, like religiously, for lack of a better word. I've used them for health, wellness, but I focus on creativity. And it came to this place now where I say, like, we're all excelling creatively in family, faith, business, and community. That's what
Hmm.
the point of the blog is. And what I found is, whenever I talk with women, especially, I mean, women are my main market. I do have some men that I've worked with over the years and they're great. Um, I just find that women, we tend to be more nitpicky on ourselves, hard on ourselves. You know,
Yep.
men seem to show up more confidently for the most part. And what I found is that there were those four areas. Like, they would be like, oh, well, I'm not a musician. But then what they could do with their family and the correction, I'd be with like a mom and the kid would slam a door and she'd be like, come here, little Billy. Why
Uh-huh.
don't you slam that door 6 more times? And I'd be like, what? And then the kid would get so bored with it that, I mean, six probably, but they would get bored with slamming it that they wouldn't slam it anymore. I would
Mhm.
never think of something like that. To
Mhm.
me, that's creativity.
Right.
Or the way that you've brought together different religions, different ideologies, different dogmas, whatever the word you want to call it. And I even love, like in the beginning of this chat, you said like even atheists and agnostics, so you wouldn't typically group into a spiritual category. You've said like, hey, I'm going to develop this space and
Mhm.
make it safe, and we're going to have conversations or not. We're
Mhm.
going to sit together or we're going to do something else. And I'm
Mhm.
going to create this safe space where people of all walks of life can come together in the middle of it all and yet find solace and freedom.
Yeah.
That's genius. I mean, that's not like, they're not all over the place. Yeah, they will be one day, right?
Right.
There we go.
My
And
plan manifest.
I hope so, because I think we need that. You know,
Mhm.
I think and again, I come from a Christian I come from a Christian perspective and worldview. Um, I think the churches that do best are the ones not afraid of the conversations.
Right.
You know, when you're able to sit down, just because we come from different backgrounds doesn't mean we need to walk away believing the same thing. What if we
Mhm.
walk away still believing differently and just believe in whatever we believe to make any changes? If they,
Mhm.
if they need to be there. And when you do that, all of a sudden everybody in the church doesn't look the same either. Now
Mhm.
we've got diversity in the true sense.
Mhm.
And I love when we show up in the world, we both talked earlier about the authenticity. And whether it's your voice, connecting with your authentic self, whether it's how you show up in the world, or even how you're showing up for you,
Right.
it is so important to have a safe and creative environment. And creative, not meaning that I'm going to write a song or a poem, but
Mhm.
creative meaning that I can create whatever I want.
Mhm.
And that might be a mantra, and that might be learning, like you mentioned, the lecto divino, divinia. My pastor had shared that with me a little while back because
Mhm.
I was having trouble. I tell you, my best ideas come the minute I start to pray. I start, and then all of a sudden it's like there. And I've learned to like just start noting them down and to focus. And that was a practice that helped me
Mhm.
because I have a severely ADD mind. It's not a spiritual thing. It's not Satan coming in to rob me of my prayer time. It was just simple that my brain works differently. And I
Mhm.
had to learn how to work with it. And that was one practice that helps me to be able to sit and say, I'm going to read this. I'm going to
Mhm.
answer this question or read it again. I'm answering nothing. I'm going to read
Mhm.
it again. Okay, what did I get this time? And
Mhm.
the Bible study I'm doing right now with a girlfriend of mine from the group She Reads Truth, it has a similar, like, what did you hear in this passage? What does
Mhm.
that say to you about God? How does it challenge you to live differently? And I love it because what she gets and what I get sometimes, it's like, whoa, did we read the same passage?
Right.
It's
Right.
great.
Uh-huh. And I love one of the things about Lectio Divina is that reading it from an imaginative perspective. So reading it one of the times, reading it like putting yourself into that, and what are you using all your senses, and what are you hearing, what are you feeling, what are you seeing, what are you smelling, what are you tasting in that setting of the verse that you're reading. How do you creatively put yourself and imaginatively put yourself in that time and in that moment?
See, and I think of that as creativity, and so not to make you walk away believing you're creative, but
Right.
I found that so interesting because I really thought it takes a creative to come at anything that the world sets very black and white standards on
Mm-hmm.
and say, I'm going to look at it differently. One of my favorite kinds of creative writing, I'm actually working on a series of Bible studies called The Bible in Real Life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like one of the titles of the Bible study, the story of Cain and Abel is, of course you Cain, you're totally able. And it's like fun things, the woman at the well is called from thirsty to refreshed in a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes at the world of like, yeah, these were told 2,000 years ago. And even if you don't believe the Bible, I have an uncle who totally believes Jesus existed, but he's not a deity.
Oh,
We
right.
still have amazing conversations about the Bible. We don't
Yeah.
have to believe in that same element to get
Mm-hmm.
something amazing from the story. And I'm a big believer in when we can just have the conversation. So I started like thinking about, like, I have a story I wrote called The Woman at the Well, Friday Night at the Well. I think it was called Friday Night at the Well. And it was about a bar called The Well and this woman who was pregnant, and this man's like, I can give you water that will never make you thirsty again. And she's like, get away from me, creep. Because like imagine if Jesus was saying stuff to you like that today. Like
Mm-hmm.
we'd be like, hello 911,
Uh-huh.
texting
Yeah.
our safe word, to our
Uh-huh.
friend. and
Yes.
and yet those were the kind of conversations happening. So what would it be like, when you talk about being there? What did the sense feel like? What did you think? And one of my favorite bloggers, she writes from um oh, Cindy, her name's Cindy Thielen, and I
Mm.
always mess up the name of her blog, but I think it's called In His Grace or something like that. And she writes these on Thursdays, I believe it is, or Wednesdays. She writes these stories where she puts herself in an obscure figure from the Bible. So not the people we talk about all the time when you talk about different religious
Oh,
beliefs,
yeah.
but like the little girl who's following the crowd who
Yeah.
watched the woman with the issue
And
of
I
blood.
love that. I love
Yes.
that because again, there's so many different perspectives, and I really am passionate about social justice and
Okay.
about people who feel like they're on the margins. And so, if you
Yes.
can see some of these stories that you can tell from heart, but if you look at them from a perspective of somebody who's on the margin in that story, that'll give you a whole different perspective, and maybe give us a little bit more compassion and understanding for the people now that we're interacting with who are on the margins for a variety of different
Mhm.
reasons. Yeah.
I definitely understand why we connected. My passion is working with women who have been through domestic violence situations, who have been sexually assaulted, individuals like the transgender community and
Oh, yeah.
homosexuals,
Hmm.
working with people who the world, we often don't understand them. We don't understand. Like I remember a sister-in-law who said, if my brother ever hit her, she would be gone in a second. But yet he could sleep around like
Hmm. Yeah.
7 and it didn't bother her. And he was one of my brothers through like foster care and stuff like that. And so I just don't want people like, if you watch it, my two brothers, it's not Stephen and Sean I'm talking about. But I remember she said to me, but if he ever laid a hand on me, and it's like, it's easy to judge me in that perspective, because I could easily say, had my ex ever slept around, I'd have been gone in a second.
Mhm.
But it's easy to say until you're in that moment and you're seeing the tears come down, and all of a sudden, like one of the lines in one of my poems is, your empty promises fill my cup. And they
Mhm.
did. Every time he would make those promises, all of a sudden I was like, wait, but if I give up on you, I'm giving up on you the way people should have given up on me. What kind of human am I? And you start beating yourself up. And so I have just this passion for helping people understand the
Mhm.
things I don't even understand. One of my friends who's transgender, she said something to me one day. I grew up in this body. I wake up every day in this body. So when people are telling her, you're not this or you're not that, she wakes up every day in that body. You don't
Right.
have to convince her of anything, because she wakes up that
Right.
way.
Right.
And that's one of the poems I wrote, was after a friend committed suicide, after being a pastor for years, 20
Mm.
years after having the surgery and transitioning. Information came out one day. It was never hidden on purpose. It was
Oh,
never hidden on purpose. It just wasn't thought of, because
right.
growing up, we always thought of him as him. And so what do you do when all of a sudden you're at somebody's bedside and they say, hey, has there ever been any surgeries? And you're like, oh yeah, the transition. And all of a sudden the fiance is there and didn't know,
Wow.
never thought to say anything. Well, the church made him step down, and he couldn't reconcile that he met God after transitioning, because he finally felt like himself. And
Mhm.
when you read the poem, like even reading it back, just thinking about it, like you feel my anger.
Mhm.
I mean, it angered me that what we don't understand scares us,
Mhm.
and it shouldn't.
Mhm.
Just ask questions.
Mhm. And that goes
Most
back
people
to
aren't afraid to answer them.
the conversation that we had when we started about your identity versus
Yes.
your authentic self. And so if you're not in touch then with your authentic self and your whole world is wrapped up in your identities, um,
Oh.
either make decisions based on these identities, um, because you're attached to that person who is negative, but you can't imagine your world not having that person because that's fused into your identity, or even your identity based on your external gender presentation. And then that's your external, like the way you look, your body looks is not your authentic self.
Right,
Um,
right.
but if we can't get beyond that identity in whatever it is, we can't really live our authentic life.
I love that. We got there like totally went on a rant, and thank you for bearing
Uh-huh.
with me and bringing it back. Because I think that really boils down. So whether we're talking about spirituality, creativity, or anything, it
Mhm.
really
Yeah.
is my identity, and how I define myself isn't necessarily, if I'm understanding you right, um, it's not necessarily who I am. It's getting
Right.
down to that, because I wear, and actually, gosh, I just was talking to somebody about the labels we pick up. The
Mhm.
labels. You could say teen mom. I was teen mom, had my oldest at 17. Sinner, drug
Mhm.
dealer, like all kinds of things you could label me with. And
Mhm.
people that are in my life now would be like, wait, what?
Mhm.
And would you think differently of me if you knew those things about me? I haven't been that person for 20 plus years, but all of a sudden your feelings toward me might change, because people like that are this certain way. And so it all comes down to, once we're in touch with our authentic self, I don't care anymore about saying I was those things. I
Right.
wore those labels proudly. I wore victim for years,
Mhm.
and now I don't, because it's not. But sometimes I get too far in the overcomer. Oh, I'll try to wear that badge proudly and show up with that rainbow colors flying all over me about God's promises and whatnot. But
Uh,
at the end of the day, none of that. It's all
mhm.
who I am at my core.
Yep.
And that doesn't come in any of this. Swipe away the makeup, change the hair, change the glasses. That is who I end up being, is that person that's beyond all of that. So,
Mhm.
and I love it because you've created this space where people can connect with that. That's
That
beautiful. I'm so excited to have met you, Kelly.
I'm excited too, and I love part of the things that I love most about this journey for me, because this for me has been kind of the outcome of my last 3-4 years of excavating my authentic self. And
Mm.
so I was able to kind of say who I was, what I valued, what my purpose was, what is important to me. And after 40 plus years of wearing different labels and being a perfectionist and trying to control everything, and just not showing up in the world a good way. And so this journey has allowed me to have conversations and have authentic conversations with people like you and people in my area, um, that I can just jump in and have these conversations, and it's so wonderful.
And it feels like it could go on forever. I'm like, oh my gosh, we just talked for an hour and it feels like it was like 15 minutes.
For sure.
But I love that, because I love when you connect with somebody at that soul level. And that's really what it is when we take away the outside, it doesn't matter what our ethnicity is. It doesn't matter what our beliefs are. At the end of the day, I love somebody said that we're all spiritual beings having a physical journey.
Having a bit, exactly.
And I forget who said that, but it's so true, because when you let your spirit just
Wayne
connect,
Dyer.
Okay,
Hmm.
when you let yourself connect with somebody at that true level, that authentic, take all the crap away and all the stuff that we take on or pile on ourselves,
Hmm.
and it's just two people connecting, it becomes so beautiful. And
Hmm.
it does. Moments go by, hours go by in what seems like moments. And so
Hmm.
thank you. I know we went a little off topic there, and that's
Awesome.
been just a passion. It's such a subject of mine, because I want us all to have more honest conversations, and get rid of, there'd be so much less to be afraid of if we just ask questions of each other. And it's one of the things I love about this platform, is being able to just talk with people and learn more about them. So thank you for being willing to do this. I appreciate it. All right, bye, Kelly. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me. This was great. Bye.
Bye.